I've actually been sitting here trying to rack my brain as to why there aren't more Shrek action figures. I mean, could you imagine like an articulated Shrek figure from, I don't know, Hasbro or McFarlane? What about a Lord Farquaad action figure? Like, you're essentially printing money at that point. They could even work on a donkey figure, and then eventually the Build-A-Figure could be like, I don't know, the dragon. You know, that gigantic dragon that a donkey is hooking up with. I don't know what I'm talking about. But seriously, Shrek action figures, that's where the money is at, okay? No, we don't want another Spider-Man action figure for the 1000th time. How about you try something a little bit different? But all jokes aside, let's get straight into today's video because there are quite a few things to cover. I did actually mention in a previous video that we were going to circle back around and talk about that Mafex Gambit action figure. And from my understanding, this one has already been released in the past. I think this is a different variation or like a different color scheme on this particular figure. It's supposed to be based on, I'm assuming, like different comic book runs. This will come with a crazy amount of different effect pieces as well as an extra head sculpt. And then let's not forget that soft goods jacket as well. And I stand by what I said in my previous video where I essentially bashed Mafex a little bit for just not adding enough paint applications to certain figures or certain releases. But here, I think they did step it up a little bit. I mean, this figure doesn't have a crazy ton of paint apps either, but there is a little bit of a wash here and there. If I'm not mistaken, the shin pads maybe have a little bit of a wash or some extra paint. And then there is a little bit of shading going on in the hair, which definitely brings it to a new level. I love it. Just the sculpt work alone on that hair just kind of brings more character to the figure. It just feels more natural in like a dynamic pose. Not to mention that soft goods jacket doesn't appear to hinder the articulation too much. I mean, even if it does, I don't think it's the end of the world. I think if you're purchasing this figure and you know that there's a soft goods jacket included, you just automatically assume that it's going to be a little bit limited in terms of articulation. But it does appear to have all the articulation points that a regular Mafex action figure would come with. And as I mentioned, the effect pieces definitely do quite a bit to add to the overall value of the figure. And then obviously it will also include some extra hands, so you can pose him throwing the card, and then some gripping hands where he can hold on to the staff. And then they also showcased him holding some powered up flamed cards between his fingers, and I just love the promotional images here. Mafex isn't always known for giving us like top-notch promotional images, but I think they did a fairly decent job of giving us some really good poses with the effect pieces and the wired cloth jacket on full display. And honestly, I can't say this with full certainty, but this may honestly be the best looking comic book accurate Gambit out there. I believe Hasbro has tried their hands at making a really good Gambit. There was that retro carded version not too long ago, but I don't know, this one with the soft goods and the extra accessory pieces and the really good looking head sculpts, I definitely feel like even though it is a much pricier option, it definitely is the easy option here. It is by far the best Gambit that any manufacturer has released. However, I do feel like Hasbro's is not that far behind. Like, they do have some of the newer body molds that they've been marching out there with, some of the new pinless technology, some of that double ab articulation, and then just maybe throw in some soft goods. And if they can't really get the soft goods going, maybe they can do the soft plastic around the figure. But I think they're very close. I think they can kind of challenge this particular version, and it's only a matter of time before they give us another Gambit, because it feels like every, I don't know, like year, every couple of years, they give us a new version of Gambit. I think they did one not too long ago. I can't quite remember. Was it the Age of Apocalypse version, if I'm not mistaken? It didn't look great with that soft plastic, but I think if they come back around and give us like a more classic representation of Gambit, I think it's definitely going to sell well, considering the other alternative is buying, a Mafex Gambit for about $100. Now, moving on, I actually did want to make this just a Marvel video, but then quickly I realized there's not much in terms of Marvel, and there was something that McFarlane announced that kind of boiled my blood a little bit, and I decided, why not? I'm gonna rant about that, even though they're not both DC universes. I want to start moving forward, kind of grouping them together. Like if there's a DC announcement, I'll kind of group that together with something else. Maybe it's not from the same manufacturer, but it's from the same universe, like DC or Spawn or something like that. But in this particular case, we're mixing it up because these two things just happen to kind of get announced like a day apart. So I did want to talk about the new Atomic Blast, Godzilla, and Wonder Woman 2-pack, and I just can't explain how frustrating this 2-pack is. Now look, I like the Monsterverse crossing over with the DC universe just as much as the next guy. I think in concept it's really cool. I have heard that the comic book storyline was actually really well written and really well put together. So, I'll eventually come back around, maybe pick up the collected volumes or whatnot. But to be brutally honest, in action figure form, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. I don't think McFarlane understands the big monster verses. I don't think he understands King Kong and Godzilla, and for the most part he's just giving us the biggest representation of Godzilla that he possibly can. It's not necessarily the best articulation, the best sculpt work. It's just about giving us a big giant hunk of plastic. That's what McFarlane has always been about. We had the same complaint about the kaiju action figure that was released for the it was like a deluxe figure that was released with the live action Superman film, which was an absolute atrocity. It was like offensive to the community because that figure had like no articulation, and I'm assuming it was like just hollow plastic. And I feel like that's what the entire Monsterverse from McFarlane has been. It's just giving you a gigantic hunk of plastic with minimal articulation and very limited paint apps and detail. And here I'm almost 100% sure that they're reusing that Godzilla body mold. Have they not already given us a Godzilla mold? If I'm not mistaken, I think that one was included with a Batman. This is just like a repainted version, or maybe it has a new head sculpt. But it's offensive because that particular version of Wonder Woman, and I'm going to go out on a limb and say that this is probably a reuse of the DC Collector's Edition line body for Wonder Woman. Why make it a 2-pack? Like, people are groveling over being able to pick up a maybe not such a classic representation of Wonder Woman, but at least like a prototypical vision of Wonder Woman, right? Like anything between, I would say, like the New 52 and Rebirth era. I think that's probably what everybody thinks of when they think of like a more modern take on Wonder Woman. Not so much the classic one, because you already did do the Page Punchers version of Wonder Woman, which was based on her first appearance, which looked a little bit weird. It looked a little bit outdated, but if you wanted like a first appearance 100% classic Wonder Woman to go along with like your first appearance Superman and first appearance Batman, that was the figure to pick up. But most of us are used to seeing like the collector's edition line Wonder Woman. That's kind of, our brain has adjusted to seeing Wonder Woman like that. And this one is closer to that. I'm not 100% sure if that body mold is either using the collector's edition line version or the one from the Justice League, or I should say the Snyderverse universe, where it was Gal Gadot. Maybe it was that body mold. But this figure looks really well designed. I don't necessarily love the head sculpt. It kind of reminds me of like a more animated look, or something that's based on like, I don't know, an anime from somewhere, like from overseas, like, Wonder Woman was in a manga somewhere. But just from my perspective, I feel like this is a huge insult to the community, because people have been just begging McFarlane to give the people like a more modern take of, Wonder Woman, similar to what he did with the collector's edition line version, and he hasn't done it. He decides to throw it in with this gigantic hunk of plastic. I just don't understand. By the way, in case you guys are wondering what this is retailing for, it's retailing for $80 on almost every single website that I've checked, which is 3 websites. Okay, I'm not going out of my way to check like 20 different retailers, but yeah, the 3 that I checked, all of them had this 2-pack at $80, and then I think like 2 or 3 of these websites had already sold out. So maybe I'm a buffoon, maybe people really do want this at $80, but to me it just feels like most people are gonna buy this 2-pack and then try to look for ways to get rid of the Godzilla, or they could care less about the Godzilla. It just doesn't make any sense in my tiny brain to keep around these giant hunks of plastic. And he could have easily done this Wonder Woman in a single pack release, maybe have the collector's edition line, or re-release the collector's edition line in a more simple format, maybe without the extra accessories, maybe just a sword and a shield, or just a sword, or just a lasso in that case. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. By the way, that Wonder Woman, I'm not 100% sure if he ever did small page punchers 4-inch Wonder Woman, so this may be the first time that we're ever seeing a Wonder Woman at that scale, but I think they might have already done it. I'm just going off of recent memory. But as I mentioned, just a really interesting release from McFarlane here. Instead of doing what the consumer, or I should say, instead of giving what his consumers what they desperately need, which is just a more modern yet somewhat classic representation of Wonder Woman, he instead, locks it in this 2-pack with a Godzilla that nobody cares about. And here's the thing about it: there may be some people out there that are really big into the Godzilla universe, but I don't think a lot of the DC collectors are crossing over to that particular universe. I think people that collect Godzilla and collect all of those big MonsterVerse characters probably just collect that. There may be some crossover here and there, but it kind of reminds me of that new like Marvel Legends crossover with the Magic the Gathering card game, where it just doesn't feel like there's enough of a crossover to like justify the crossover. Now people are having, if people wanted those particular cards, they now have to pick up a ridiculous action figure that they don't care about, or vice versa. Like, what if somebody really wants that figure, but they don't want to pay the ridiculous $15 markup to just receive a card that they're just gonna like wipe their rear ends with? It just doesn't make any sense. Sometimes crossovers are creative, they're fun, they're cool. They introduce maybe like new collectors to something that they might have never paid attention to. But in this particular case, I think both McFarlane and Hasbro made huge mistakes by making these crossovers that nobody was really asking for. But at the end of the day, maybe I'm the buffoon, because as I mentioned, this Wonder Woman 2-pack has already sold out through multiple different websites. And my assumption is that people just feel like, hey, I'm not going to be able to get that collector's edition line Wonder Woman. That thing is like, I don't know, 140 to 150 on eBay, and that's probably only going to continue to raise in price. They figured, like, I can't purchase those. I'm just going to pick up this 2-pack. I'll bite the bullet on the Godzilla. I'll hand it to my dog as a chew toy, or I'll hand it to one of my toddlers so he can just completely destroy it. But as always, this is just my personal opinion, my personal take. I'm very curious to see what the community has to say. Are you guys interested in this particular 2-pack? Well, I guess it's technically a 3-pack because of the small, tiny little 4-inch Wonder Woman that has like no articulation. But yeah, it's a 3-pack. Wonder Woman comes with her lasso. Are you guys going to pick this up? Are you going to skip on it? Are you upset about it? Are you okay with it? Do you like this crossover? I'm genuinely curious to see what all of you guys have to say. Also, let me know about the Gambit. Do you feel like this is maybe the best looking comic book accurate Gambit that we've ever seen? Let me know down below. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Make sure to stay tuned. We are uploading on a daily basis. We absolutely love talking about action figures on this channel, and hopefully that comes across with every single video that we make. Stay safe out there. Enjoy the hobby. Post your action figures. Play around with them, and I'll see you guys in the next one.